بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So today we're going to continue in the chapter of trade or commerce or business or basic economics, whatever you call it, بيوع, selling and buying basically. والمعاملات and other things that are associated with trade. So today we're going to start by talking about riba, and this is going to be something that's important for us to learn about and understand properly. So he says, وَالرِّبَا فِي الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْمَطْعُومَاتِ. So we're going to talk immediately, we're going to go to the board right away and talk about what this means. So riba exists in two things, in الذهب والفضة, gold and silver, and exists in al-mat'umat, staple food crops. All right, so this is where riba exists for when we talk about Islam, or we talk about it from an Islamic perspective, sorry. So al-mat'umat, talk about stable food crops, and we talk about dhahab al-fidda, gold and silver, so money and currency. And here we have basic needs. Now, does it exist in other things too? Other assets with a khilaf. So there's khilaf going this way. There's agreed upon, there's khilaf over here. With the other assets, there's also riba in dealing other assets. So what do I mean by dealing other assets? First of all, the concept of riba is very, very old and exists in almost every culture and civilization, no matter how far you go back in history. Banu Israel are known most for it because they were given the commandment that is haram in the Torah, and yet they did it with themselves, with each other, and with others, which made riba وَأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَا وَقَدْ نُهُوا عَنْهُ. In the Quran, وَأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَا, they took riba even though they were told not to do so. So riba is basically when you loan someone money, or you lend someone money, and you take it back with interest. That's basically what riba comes down to. It is when money increases with time. Money is not being used to strengthen the economy. It's not being recycled back into the economy. Rather, it's just making a profit based on the fact that time is progressing. So you're not really doing anything. You're not taking any risks. You're not investing. You're not buying. You're not selling. You're not doing anything at all. Your money is just increasing as time progresses. That's all that's happening, and that is what riba is. What does that mean? What does that lead to? That leads to the fact that those who have money will have more money, and those who don't will never be able to make the profit that they need to make because they're always being held down by debt. Meaning debt is accumulating just by time. That means, so when time equals money in the form in the context of a loan, this becomes the problem of riba. And every other thing that's going to be haram in riba is going to be based on that simple fact. I mean, coming back to it, trying to make sure we don't leave too many loopholes open for people to abuse and later on within riba. So, for example, I lent you $10, okay? I told you you're going to pay it back to me 12. That makes sense? Now that's haram. That's riba immediately. So we don't do it that way. We don't do it that way. What we do is I lend you $10, but you have to come and buy from me. You have to buy from me $10 later on. So you're going to buy from me a $10 bill. How much are you going to pay for it? You're going to pay for it $12. Does that make sense? Understand what can happen? So it's not really riba. It's rather, hey, do you have $10 in your pocket? And you take out $10 bill. Yep, I do. Okay, I'll pay you $12 for that $10. Right? That's another form of riba. And it's just a back door for actually doing riba. It's just a back door. Does that make sense? So let's say you don't have money and I do. I have $10 bills in my hand. So you tell me this. So I want this to make full sense. I want you to listen carefully. If you make sense of it, then you'll understand how riba works. I got the $10 bill, you don't have it, you want it. You'll tell me, instead of me doing riba, instead of me loaning it to you, lending it to you, and you pay me back $12, you'll tell me this. You'll tell me, you have $10? Yep, I do. I'll buy it from you for $12. I'll pay you $12 for the $10. I'll pay you $12 for the 10. And I'll pay you, inshallah, but I don't have money on me now, I'll pay you later. Is it the same? Isn't it the same thing? It's exactly the same thing, right? Same thing goes for, yes?
But the time constraint here doesn't, the time goes on like $2 difference.
So hold on, that's a different issue. That's the difference between money and currency. So that's the difference in terms of, inflation is a different thing. So the concept of inflation is different altogether. We're talking about money here. So we're talking about $2 in a system where currency is backed up properly by gold and silver, and it holds on to its value. It's not going to lose value as time progresses. We're not talking about that specifically. But what we're talking about here is that money. So let me say I took, instead of saying it, I gave you a $10 bill as the example, but it could be anything. It could be, in this example, gold. It could be 1 gram of gold. So you have 1 gram of gold? Yeah. I'll buy it. I want to buy that 1 gram of gold. I'll pay you 1.5 grams of gold for it. Same thing. So I take that gram of gold and I'll tell you I'll pay you for it, 1 gram of gold, 1.5 grams. When? How about a year? I'll pay. I'll pay you later, right? And that's acceptable in the deen. I can take the merchandise and pay you at a certain point later on. So I'm paying you. But that's riba at the end. What I'm taking is not a sila. I'm not taking an asset. I am taking money. I'm paying money for money. I'm buying money with money. That's haram. You don't buy dhahab bi dhahab or fidda bi fidda. And the same thing goes for mat'umat, for staple food crops. Because the other way, it could work the other way around too. You can just use the same example that I gave you, where I have with me $10 and you don't. Let's say that I have 10 kilos of wheat and you have 20 kilos of wheat, right? So what I do is we exchange it. This much is value based, meaning I equalize. I say I want to buy those 10, these 20 kilos of wheat with my 10 kilos of wheat, right? And then we exchange back and forth. And now you have the 10 and I have the 20. And that's just another backdoor of us doing riba. I mean, you're going to find a different way to do riba. Instead of me actually saying I'm going to do riba on it, I'm going to buy the 10 kilos of wheat with 20 kilos that I have, even though they're both the same jins. I mean, they're the same product. We're using the same asset. There's no difference. So the Prophet said, in that case, what you should do is go sell your 10 kilos of wheat, and then with the money buy the 20 kilos of him. If you can convince them that this is how much you're gonna. But when you just exchange it like that, it's basically just a backdoor for us to do it. But yeah.
Isn't that basically the person who's buying with his 10 kilos? He's buying that 20 kilos. Isn't that basically losing? Why would anyone do that?
So it makes no sense when you think of it. What it does is it turns into a backdoor for us to commit riba. It turns into a way for us to commit riba without actually breaking the law. It's a loophole. So one of the loopholes is that, okay, I'm not going to do it I'm not going to do this with money. I'm not going to buy your $10 with $12. I'll buy your 20 kilos of wheat with 10 kilos of wheat. So it's the exact same example. Basically, we're just using it. The Prophet ﷺ tried to close all the loopholes that could possibly exist for us to have riba, right? So he did his best ﷺ in terms of talking about al-mat'umat, the staple food crops, and talking about gold and silver. And other scholars talked about other assets, even though they don't all agree to it, because they're not used as commonly, and they're not produced in such huge amounts. So it doesn't. So if I have 10 kilos of potatoes and I want 5 kilos of cucumbers, we can exchange that from most scholars. That's acceptable because they're not the same asset, because they will have different values in the market. So maybe I lose, maybe I win. It's not clear. But when it's the same asset, when it's both wheat, it's just wheat, then 10 kilos and 20 kilos, you're just losing or winning here. It turns into a form of riba. Yeah.
Is it different quality of wheat?
So even when it came to that, the Prophet said, okay, even if it's different quality, just don't do that. Sell your bad quality and then buy with it later on, because that will lead to a different problem in the market later on. It will lead to a problem where only people who have certain amounts of money can eat certain foods and others have to eat lower. So the problem of riba is a bit complex in terms of what it leads to within any economic system, but the haram, the hurma, the impermissibility that we have is based on the same idea, that your money has to, if you're going to make a profit on it, it has to be invested or has to be moved around recycled into the economy. It can't just equal time based on the fact that there are others who need it or the others who want to build something with it.
What if I had a loan from someone and we didn't agree that I'm going to pay him back more, but because he lent me that money, I was able to get more money and I wanted to show him appreciation for that money.
So if you give as in the form of a hiba, in the form of a gift, after you pay, they differ on that. Some scholars say it's okay, and some of them say that opens the door for this becoming a norm, and then we're going all back to riba all over again. Because if it becomes the norm, well, I lent you money, and it's customary that you give me a gift, then that's just another form of riba.
Agreed upon that it wasn't the case.
Yeah, I know. So some scholars are okay with it, fine. Yeah, and some of them will say that that's said the so it opens the door for us to later on turn this system of lending money into riba. What they did talk about, I think this is the best system that exists, is that if you're going to do it, you do it in a whole different timing and a different form. Meaning you actually buy them a gift, so it's not really money, and you do it in a later timing, and you don't do it every single time you take in money, because it turns into because then this happens all the time, by the way. Sometimes it's not written contracts, it's understood contracts, like it's implied, even though it's not written and agreed upon. Implied contracts Islamically, if it is the cultural norm, is as if it's written. Because that's what people will hold you to, meaning you won't be able to get a loan ever again if you don't give the gift that you were supposed to give, and that's riba. So maybe you didn't pay it this time, but you're going to be denied this service forever. So they differ on that specific topic. Now when it comes to a contract that has riba in it, so the jumhur, maybe before I continue talking about this, the jumhur of scholars say that it's a contract that is batil. Batil means it's an unacceptable contract. The contract is invalid the moment that you insert the concept of riba in it anywhere. The Hanafiya specifically, and maybe Daniel's not here, but you remember in Usul al-Fiqh, Hanafiya they differ. They have a discrepancy in issues of trade. They have a contract that is batil, that is invalid, and a contract that is fasid. Fasid means that the contract itself is right, but there's a mistake in it, which means it's fasid, so it's ruined by a mistake that's in it. And they say they're different things. So for the Hanafiya, if you write a contract that has riba in it, you are owed the loan that you gave, and you don't get the riba part. But for the Jumhur, the contract itself is invalid. Whoever I lent you the money. For the Jumhur, if this is caught, we tear up the paper and you give the money back, and this is not going to happen again. The whole contract is unacceptable. For the Hanafiya, no, the contract stays. We just take out the riba part from the contract.
So
does that make sense?
Somebody tells me that, okay, well, I'm going to give you the money, you give me back twice as much.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. But then later, when it's time to pay, I'm like, well, this is invalid, so I'm going to give you just the actual amount. Can I just do that every time?
Why would you say okay?
Because he wouldn't give it to me any other way. Like, he wouldn't say, I'll give you that money if you don't give me back twice as much.
So the guy in front of you won't take your money unless he gets to pay you twice as much?
No, he won't give you money.
He won't give you money.
Unless you pay. So he's like, I want to get a loan. He's like, okay, I'll give you 100,000, but give me back 200,000.
No, you're not allowed to enter that. And no, you're not allowed to do that.
He says if I enter it, and then I won't give him 100,000.
No, that's haram. Entering the contract is haram from the beginning. We're talking about the contract exists now. The Jumhur said it's invalid immediately, and it has to be the money that was taken has to be returned, and the contract is invalid. The Hanafi, the contract is valid. We just take out the riba part. But for you as an individual, you're not allowed to enter a contract that has riba in it anyway. You're not allowed to enter a contract that has riba. I'll talk about the exceptions that exist in this country in a minute. So I'll talk about the exceptions. There are 4 exceptions within this country that we'll talk about. But as a Muslim, even if you never pay riba, if you never ever do it, like the contract that you have has a riba clause in it, but you'll never actually pay it because you have you're just lucky you don't pay. You always have the money. The fact that you signed a contract that has riba in it, that's a muharram. That's muharram. You shouldn't sign a contract that puts on you riba. So if you're late with a payment, that's going to accumulate interest on you. Again, inflation is a different thing. Inflation is a very different concept when, unfortunately, a lot of the Muslim scholars don't understand it. And a lot of them will give very, very naive and superficial fatwa. If someone tells, well, my father lent his father $500 in 1965, and there's an actual document, so he'll tell you pay him back $500, right? Because that's what he took from him. And that's just based on the lack of understanding of what currency is. This is currency. This was representing a certain amount of gold. If that currency is not representing the same amount of gold, find out how much currency would represent the same amount of gold and pay him that amount, because that is what you owe him. This is not an issue of riba. If today the currency, the value of currency had gone up, and then you could pay him $50 if that represented the same amount of gold within the bank. Does that make sense? So we connect what you take to an asset, either to money or to an asset. If I lent, my loan from you was 10 kilograms of wheat, and we agreed that I would pay you back 10 kilograms of wheat. Well, that stays as is, because wheat is a stable food crop. It's not based on the value of gold. Gold is based on the value of wheat, not the other way around. So I give you back 10 kilograms of wheat. When it comes to currency, because currency is only a representative of a certain amount of gold that is held within banks, then you have to pay back whatever that amount is, and that's the whole point. Because $500 at a certain time, actually it was $500 in 1960. Is it the same amount it carries today? Not even close, not even not by a long shot. So that has to be equalized. And a lot of scholars don't understand that, and they'll say, no, it's haram, and it's riba, and it's not riba. You just understand the difference between money and currency. Currency just represents money, which is gold, and so doesn't have value in its own self. So if you took $500, you just took something that represented a certain amount of gold, and you used it. So now you have to give him back whatever represents that same amount of gold, or give him the amount of gold. Right, because gold is the thing that we hold on to. Or you choose a staple food crop. Some scholars are okay with that, and I think that's a fine idea as well. Choose a staple food crop that holds on to its value. So what are the staple food crops that they agree upon as riba is haram in? Again, I'm going to tell you what the scholars agree upon in the form of that, and what they don't agree upon, things that are a matter of disagreement, but what I think is the should be the idea, or my opinion in the matter. So it's riba, sha'ir, tamr, and milh. So it's riba, it's qamh and sha'ir. Where's the, here they are. So qamh and sha'ir, so wheat, barley, dates, and salt. These ones, you cannot buy and sell them with each other in the same amount. I mean, I can't say, give me, I have 10, I'm going to buy those 20 kilos of salt with these 10 kilos of salt. You don't do that. It has to be exactly the same. Here's 20, give me 20. You're going to say, what's the point of that? I don't know, but if you do that, that's fine. Right? It's a useless transaction, but if that's what you want to do, it's your choice. If you want to say, here's 20, I'm going to take 20, it's up to you. But you can't do it less or more. If you have, if they're different qualities, go sell and then buy. Go sell, take currency, take money as an amount for it, and then go buy it again to keep the market moving. So the market actually, because that money stays liable. Because again, if you kill the value of money within an economy, we go back to the chaos that existed before money was discovered or come up with by human beings, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the concept of gold and silver as money for humans. Because before, I had a cow, you had some potatoes, I wanted some meat, and I wanted some potatoes, you wanted meat. So what we're going to do here, obviously for the kilo of potatoes, I'm not going to give you a cow for it, and I can't chop off a piece of this cow and give it to you while it's alive. So it becomes very difficult. What do we do here? So we had to come up with something that allowed us to function as a race. So and when you look at them, what is common for them, or what is the common denominator for these four? It's the time. It's a cultural. It's a time and cultural thing. So time, place, culture, economy dictated that these four were important more than every other staple food crop. Meaning, back at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, these four things were being bought and sold all the time. They were very, very heavy, very important. If you withheld these four, if you put them in a monopoly in the hands of a few merchants, then you could bring down, basically you could cause poverty and starvation within a society. Today, maybe these have changed. So what I think should be the case is that we should do qiyas from these, and this is something that the jumhur of ulama have done qiyas on all foods. So these are mat'umat, mean foods, any type of foods, staple foods, crops specifically, but we do qiyas for everything. So القياس عند الجمهور. So we draw analogies derived for all food. For the Jumhur of scholars, for the majority of scholars, they draw analogies to all types of food. So just like you're not allowed to buy 10 kilos of wheat with 20 kilos of wheat, you can't do it for any other type of food. For any other type of food. What about other assets? About other assets, they got to go into more detail. There was khilaf about this, but I think the same thing applies. I believe that the same concept will apply. To close all the loopholes for riba, to make sure that we are keeping money circulating within the economy, you have to close the door on all these transactions. But I'll give you an example. Let's say steel. So I want to take 10 tons of steel, and I have 20 tons of steel. Now the difference is your 10 tons of steel are turned into rods. They're actually steel rods, and my 20 tons of steel are just small chippets of steel. So in that case, would it be okay to exchange steel? And this is where they differ. Some scholars say even if they were, some scholars say yes, even if it would be 20 tons of steel rods that you want to buy 10 tons of steel rods, you can do it. Why? Because the difference when it comes to other assets, attributes and descriptions change value. In terms of food, it's not the same thing, especially natural foods. We're not talking about anything that's put into cans or processed foods, so stuff that you've actually tampered with and changed its attributes. We're talking about just natural food. Tamr is tamr. Wheat is wheat, barley is barley, and milk is milk, salt is salt. It's the same thing because they're natural. So they should have similar values. If you need to buy something because of a different type of quality, then do it through an exchange of money. Here it's more safe to say that here we can, so based on different attributes, and descriptions, it is permissible.
Who gets to pick?
For the Jumhur, huh?
Who gets to pick?
Who gets to pick what?
The attribute or the...
So it's something that we're agreeing upon, right? So, I mean, it's not a matter of, I know you're not being forced into this transaction. It's a transaction that you're doing, it's selling and buying. You have wool, for example, that is unprocessed, and I have processed wool. It's still wool, but I did something to it, and I want to give you my 10 tons to take 5 tons of the processed wool, because of the difference of attributes and the labor that's being done is seen to be permissible. Because a lot of these other assets are not natural assets that exist in nature. The same thing goes for a tree, for example. Depending on the type of tree, a mango tree is not the same value of an apple tree, not the same value of an oak tree. Some trees are they're just maple trees. They don't do anything. They don't give you anything to eat. They can barely get anything out of it. And other trees are going to, on every 6 months, will offer you a fruit. So based on attributes, this becomes permissible. But for food and money, it is not. So for food and money, it is not for the Jumhur of scholars. And that's what I wanted to make sure you guys understood. And the reason is because it comes down to that simple understanding. It turns the economic system into a system that is rigged for the rich to stay rich, and for the poor to take a very long time to get out of their poverty, and for the middle class to almost never ever leave their status in the middle class. You can never get out. If every time you need to take or take a loan of money, you're going to be accumulating debts, you'll almost never be able to get out of the condition that you are in. And this is what Islam, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to be haram. And you understand it more if you watch maybe documentaries talk about loan sharks. Because that's the essence of riba. It goes down to what loan sharks do. I mean, when they give you and they accumulate a lot of interest. What banks do today is still the same concept exists. I mean, the hurma is still there, but it's done on a lower scale. And there's a certain amount of it that is based on inflation. There's a certain amount of it that's actually based within the mortgages based on inflation. And the ones that are based on inflation, meaning that amount is fine. Paying that amount, meaning every 3-4 years, the $220,000 that you put for your house, you can calculate how much that is today, and then that difference can be added to your mortgage because this is just currency that's representing a certain amount of gold, and that's not a problem. But it's other things that become problematic within contracts of riba. Yes.
You said that.
Let me just.
So in this case, the middle class will stay middle class
For a very long time. It'll be very difficult for them.
because they're accumulating that.
Yeah, because
What the rich people aren't they? Don't they need money also? So they will also accumulate that.
the rich people have the money. They're the ones who are lending it out, and they're lending out the money, right? So, you see, isn't it weird to you that when you hear people talk about money today in the economy, where is the money going? No one knows where the money is going. Who has all the money? Like, the government doesn't seem to have enough money. Institutions don't have enough money. People don't have money. Who has the money? Like, where's the money? The money is in the hand of the 1 point whatever percent of the human beings on the planet, even less than that, that are lending their monies to the money that they have to institutions, banks, governments, different organizations, based on interest. So they're maybe not lending it out to you and I directly. They're lending it to the people who lend it to us later on. So we don't get to see them. They're behind the scenes, don't know who they are, or the names are hard. You can't come. So if the federal bank is the one that's giving out all the checks and lending us money, well, who's giving the federal bank the money? There you go. Go find out those names if you can find out those names. And there are not many of them, and it's based on the fact that money equals money as time progresses. And this is what there's lack of fun in that, and there's lack of no one likes that. Those who have money don't like this at all. This doesn't serve those who have a lot of cash. This doesn't serve those who have a lot of gold and silver money, or who are running a monopoly on staple food crops or types of food that are needed. It doesn't serve them because now they can't make more profit just based on the neediness of the people in front of them, or the lack of lucracy in terms of money and currency within the society with people who need it. So, and that's the problem, and that's the biggest problem. Meaning, if you have money, you can make more money, but you have to play a risk like everyone else. But you can afford it because you have a lot of money. If I have $3 million, I can risk 100,000 in a business. But if all I have is 50,000, and you're asking me to invest 100 with you, so I have to get all I have is 50. I have to get another 50 and put it in. I can't afford this. And now I'm accumulating more debt, but for you it's not the same thing. So you have to play a risk. You have to put a risk. You have to be at risk, no matter how much money that you have. But most people who have money don't like that. Yeah.
So in an ideal
Yes.
state,
I'm listening. Yes.
where would our money be held? Like, we just hold on to our money in our pocket?
No. In an Islamic state, money is worthless. It's assets that are of value. So you don't hold on to money. You always keep money circulating. In an Islamic state, al-umla and naqd is not valuable on its own. And when you think about it, that makes sense. What does gold do for you if you're hungry, cold, thirsty, or sick? Yeah, exactly. There's nothing. It doesn't do anything for you. But if you're hungry, you need food, you need clothing. That's true value, right? Knowledge that allows. But money itself is just a means to get it. So money, holding on to money, that's why we have zakah. The moment you hold on to money for too long, in the Islamic case it's a year, for too long, you have to start giving it away. And you have to give away 2.5%, which is not a small. It's small, but not too small, right? So it hurts, but just not enough to make you poor. But it does hurt because you're holding on to money and assets, and you're not moving them into society. So in Islamic state, you make money, awesome. Push it back in to make more, or get more assets for it, get more food, get more clothing, get whatever it is that is of worth, something that you can that can help you. And yes.
But if you have like $100,000, you're not gonna walk around with $100,000 in the suitcase. Like, you're gonna put that in a bank. How's the bank gonna?
Yeah, checkings. You don't really get interest on checkings.
But how's the bank gonna survive in Islamic? Like, how's the bank gonna make money because there's no riba in the Islamic state?
I'm not saying you can't have money at all. I'm not saying that all Muslims should have zero cash at all times. No, you should have.
Where do you put it? Like, where do you?
They can put it in a bank. Yeah.
So how does the bank make money?
They charge the fee for having a checking account.
So that's like the easiest thing in the world. Consider it storage. Consider you're just storing any gold or cash with them, right? And if they're going to invest, that's fine. They can ask you if the thing is, you don't understand how the system works. You put money in the bank, they immediately have access to 90% of that money to invest it without asking you. Immediately. They only hold on to 10% of what you actually put in there. But you and I only put in what, a couple of $1,000s? It's a joke, but we're talking those who put in the millions. They have access by law to immediately, if you put $10, $9 they can lend it out to people immediately and hold on just for $1 for you, that's it. In case you ask for it, they can give it back to you. But they could very easily come and ask the bank for money, your money, the money that you see in your account, but they'll say, I don't have it right now. What do you mean you don't have it? Because I invested it. So you have to understand the monetary system, how it actually works, and then when you do, you'll never want to touch a bank or enter a bank ever again when you actually understand how it actually works. But in an Islamic society, in an Islamic system, yes, of course there will be banks. It's just the regulation of these banks and how they would function would be a bit different, or very different, to be honest, than how it is right now. What are the exceptions in terms of contracts that have riba in them? What are the exceptions? So these are exceptions that the scholars have accepted, especially in the Western world. The first one, credit cards. You're allowed to have a credit card, based on the extreme need of having a credit card in this society. I mean, you need to have a credit card. It's impossible to get around without it. This has been established almost beyond the smallest shred of doubt. You need a credit card to function. Doesn't mean that you're allowed to accumulate interest on it. I'm not saying it's okay to accumulate interest at any point. I'm telling you what contracts that have riba are okay for you to enter. You're not allowed to pay riba. Listen to me, you're not allowed to pay riba. This is haram. You shouldn't be paying riba at any point in your life for any reason. But these are the contracts that have a clause of riba in them that you're allowed to sign based on extreme need. But you are not allowed to pay riba. This is not a permissibility of us or anyone to pay riba at any point. Just make sure that's clear in terms of what you're listening to. I'm just telling you the contracts that you're allowed to sign. The second one, student loans. Student loans are another contract, so OSAP. If you want to get into, you're what, 17, 18, in a year or two you want to get into an undergrad program that's going to cost you $7,000 a month. You have $7 a year? You have $7,000 a year? You don't have $7K a year. So what are you going to do? You finish that, now you have 4 years, you're $30,000 in debt. Now you want to get into medical school, that's another 4 years, that's that's $50K a year or something, $25K a year, whatever, depending on where you get into. You don't have this money. You will, but you don't have it now. Yeah, so student loans are acceptable, but you're not allowed to accumulate riba if you don't have to. I mean, you don't say, well, I can pay this anytime. No, you start paying the moment you start making money. Meaning you shouldn't be living a luxurious lifestyle with student loans, because student loans will turn into riba, or they do have riba in the clause. Now these are two that are pretty easy, everyone accepts. The third one is the one that people fight about a lot, house mortgages. Based on the conditions that those who have made it permissible put. Meaning based on the fatwa that was put in 2008 and then 2012 again, and then again 2015 within the group of scholars that talked about it in Berlin, and then talked again about it twice in America. I'm not sure the cities, but you can look these up anyways. They put down a number of conditions that apply. Again, these are contracts that have riba in them. I'm not saying in any way that this is permissible for you to pay riba. I'm saying these are the contracts that if you can enter, even though they have a clause of riba in them, and inshallah you never pay riba. I mean, you pay on time. See, if you pay these on time, within the grace periods that they have, you don't pay riba at any point. You're out of the problem of riba. It's that if you're late, or you know that you're going to be late, or you don't have money anymore. Yeah.
I'll ask them.
Okay. So what are the conditions that exist here? So I'll put down the ones that they talked about. Number one, you don't own a house.
It's not for business purposes.
It's for second, it's for livelihood. Meaning you're going to live in the house is where you're going to be living. There's no Islamic alternative or acceptable alternative. You can't find anyone to give you the loan. There's no one actually to pay you to put this loan for you to buy the house, and then you pay them back. That you looked there, you didn't find, or you looked for Islamic alternatives, and you didn't find anything that you could actually afford.
Rent and Islamic alternative, you use rent for the rest of your life.
No, so the whole fatwa is based on a very simple point, which is that owning a home in the country that you reside in, that you live in, is a human right. So that is something that most scholars agree to, long time ago and today. It is something that has been an Islamic concept that existed in almost everywhere. That as a Muslim, wherever you live, if this is where you reside, then you have the right to own a home. That's why the final one is that either you come from a war-torn area, or Canada, for example, is your main resident or residence? Yeah, you live here. I mean, you were born here. This is where you live. You're not here on a mission to finish studying or to make some money and then go back and live somewhere else. If this is where you're living, this is where you live, then you have the right to own property where you live. You have the right not to be living on a contract that would allow you to be evacuated or removed from your living position at any time. Another reason for this idea to come up is that Islam can't be the reason that we are poor in any place that we're living. Meaning, if you, for example, your parents and you have 6 kids, and to rent a place that has enough space for 8 people, you're going to pay around $2,000 a month. That's more than a mortgage. If you have a decent house, and not talking a big house, but a regular, $2,000 is actually more than a mortgage. You could be putting that towards a house that one day you actually own is yours, and then your kids have a place that they own that they can live. Worst case scenario, they put a tent in the backyard and they have a place to sleep at night. They're not going to be thrown on the streets if something goes wrong. So in these situations, now does that mean that as Muslims we're off the hook in terms of finding Islamic alternatives? No. This is something we should have found an alternative for a long time ago. As Muslims have been here for 60 years, 67 years at least. This masjid is over 50 years now. So we've been here for a long time. The fact that we don't have an alternative till this moment is very sad, and it's something that we should we should change very, very quickly, very soon. But because I can't hold you accountable for the fact that the Muslim community is lacking the ability to put together a simple fund to help people buy homes, I can't hold you accountable for that. This exists, but that doesn't mean that the community is not at fault and it's not a sin as a group for not having an alternative. Meaning, as a mujtama, as a community, we're all at sin. Finding a proper alternative for people to be able to buy homes and to get married and to do other, go for hajj and stuff like that is a fard kifaya, meaning it's a fard upon everyone until some group does it, and then it's no longer a fard on us. There's a lot of furud like that. There's a lot of obligations where it's obligatory upon everyone until a group does it and gets it done, and then it's not obligatory. This is not obligatory upon all of us until some group finds a way to set it up so that we can actually benefit from it. So this is not to excuse the fact that we don't. No, this is not to excuse it, but this is the exception until that is fixed. The same thing goes for credit cards and student loans or other things. I mean, it's not very hard for 30,000 Muslims in any community to come up with ways to fix both these problems, whether house mortgages or student loans. It's doable. And we can take people out of getting into contracts of riba easily. And then what you're stuck with is credit cards, maybe that's a tertiary or 4th step down the road, in terms of how do you actually substitute credit cards. It's a bit harder, but it's also doable. So what's not okay in terms of exceptions? What's not an exception? Car leases or finances.
I think there's 4, right?
Sorry?
There's 4 exceptions.
I did?
Yeah, you said 4 exceptions.
No, there's only these 3. Sorry, I made of.
So there's 4 because there's the last 2 that don't agree on. Is it insurance maybe?
Yes, the final one is subhanallah.
Car insurance?
No, it's life insurance, the final one.
Life insurance.
Yeah.
Doesn't cell phones have like a clause in your late payment? Pay interest on your late payment.
So what type of cell phones? What type are we talking about? So
Monthly payment cell phone that you have.
it's on the tabs that you have?
Yeah.
So like you have a tab?
You get a monthly bill for your cell phone and you miss that monthly bill, don't you usually have a percentage goal?
Yeah. But that works for everything that you don't pay cash for. So we're not talking about that. We're not talking about small assets that basically when you do things so if you have cable or if you have internet, you don't pay interest for it, because that's how this system works here. Everything that you have a monthly subscription to can accumulate riba upon you within the country. I'm not talking about. Those are fine. You have no other choice really. Basically, you sit around with nothing. you can't buy anything. You can't breathe the air. You can't drink water. Everything has riba in it here. But I'm talking about the contracts that are bigger than that you sign, and the clause now is going to be active. These are more monthly subscriptions that you can. So the final one is life insurance. Or insurance, generally speaking, insurance. So what about insurance? Insurance is not a problem with its actual concept. The concept of us putting together a fund where we where we take care of those who demographically and statistically will fall into certain types of problems. That's a form of takaful ijtimai, of social empathy or social closeness within Islamic law. So if I know statistically that, meaning we've studied human populations in our country for a long time, statistically, and this is a science, we do a census and we know the number of people, and I know that within this age group that is sitting here, how many people will die before the age of 40, and then we have a percentage of people that will die, and we know that, or will be sick. Let's talk about a very difficult disease, something, a lethal disease like cancer. So if that, what is the percentage of people who will be diagnosed with that? And then we have a certain percentage. Let's say it's 1% or 1.5%. So 1.5% of people, 2% of people, let's make it 2 just to make it easier. 2% of people are going to die. So out of every 100 people, 2 people are going to have that. So we need a certain amount of money to cover these people. What is the average cost for treatment of a cancer patient? It's between a certain number. Let's say it's around $60,000 or $50,000. So that means if we can gather from this group $100,000, then we'll be able to cover their whoever's going to get a disease. And then we increase the number a bit in case there's the statistics are off, because it's always plus. I'm just giving you a simple example of how this works. Statistics are much more complex and detailed than that. Then that's actually a form of taking care of people. If you and I, if the percentage of people in our age group dying is a certain percentage, 1% of us die before the age of 40. Well, we die at a time where we're not fully established, and we're going to leave behind us wives and children. Who's going to support them? If we put a fund together where we do the math and we know that this is how much money we need to cover for people. We're not talking about a famine coming through or war. We're not talking about something like that. It's talking about normal life kind of going forward. And then we cover those people. That's actually a good thing. The problem with insurance is not the concept. The problem with insurance is the practice. The practice itself is garbage. I mean, the insurance companies are the biggest crooks on the planet. Hands down, they are the biggest beneficiaries of money. No one even comes close. Not even no weapon companies, pharmaceutical companies, tobacco. No one comes close to how much they make. They make insane amounts of money. And the thing is that they take it and they don't recycle it back to those who actually paid it. So they just hold on to the lion's share of the money that's been given. So the concept of life insurance is not haram in its essence, and it's problematic in terms of its practice. But why I put it here? Because a lot of times you'll be working where you have no choice but you have to buy this, like as an employee or so you have to sign this off, and it's not a problem. You can sign it off. You can sign off this specifically as life insurance, and there is a certain amount of. But if you do have the choice, then you shouldn't get into it. You shouldn't by choice actually go buy life insurance. But if you are put in a position where your work you're required to sign it, and if you don't sign it, then you're going to lose benefits. You're going to lose. Then you sign it, and that's not a problem, because the actual essence of the idea is not. But there are differences of opinion about these last two. And there's a lot of scholars who will call me out on this and be very upset that I said these things. But the first two are pretty much agreed upon, within North America at least, and most scholars around the world. But here, there's difference of opinion. But this is the opinion that I carry. I believe that it's valid enough, and I believe that we're going to need to,
Does that only apply for life insurance, or is it apply to home insurance as well?
I put life because it's the most difficult. Everything else is simple. Everything else is much more simple. But I'm talking about car insurance. But life is the big one. It's the one that everyone seems to get very upset about. But everything else is much more simple. So car leases or finances, not okay. One that has a big question mark around, business loans.
Is it non-exception?
These are non-exceptions, I believe, today. I have beef with this one in terms of business loans, because it comes back to the same principle that we talked about when we talked about house or home mortgages. Business loans for people who are living here are needed in order for Muslims to make progress within the society that they have. So it is something that I question. I don't believe that we're at a point where I'm not comfortable saying that it's permissible. I believe that it's impermissible at this point, but I do believe that we have to find some alternative for it. You have people who are in firms, lawyers, and they want to buy into their firm, or you have people who want get out of working with as partners with non-Muslims who are bringing into their firm, or regardless of whether it's a medical practice or it's a restaurant, bringing things that they're not comfortable with, who want to get out and do their own thing and have an Islamic chain, an Islamic name, but they need a loan to do it. We have to have alternatives for this. I can't just say to someone that this is haram and that's it, and they have no actual alternative, because business loans are huge amounts of money. Like this here is big stuff. This is not as big. House mortgage is pretty small. It's just one, but here it's big. You're talking in the millions. It's $1.5 million or $2 million sometimes to buy out and to do your own thing to get that loan. So do we have alternatives? We should have alternatives. We don't, but I still think it's impermissible because of the amount of money. Because this is where riba becomes a problem. Small amounts of money. By the way, you do need to pay attention to the following. He who takes riba is not equal to he who has to pay it. Okay, this is an important part of understanding. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَأْكُلُوا الرِّبَا أَضْعَافًا مُضَاعَفًا. All those who believe, do not eat riba. One fold over the other. Fold upon fold. Don't eat riba. But when I'm forced to pay it, that's a different thing. I'm not saying it's halal. It is still haram. But you cannot equalize between he who is forced to take a loan and pay back more and he who has the money but is asking for more. They're not the same. They're not the same. They're not equal. This is pure evil. This is an associate or of the evil itself. So there are differences in terms of those who pay and those who take. So when you're of course taking is haram. There are no exceptions. There are literally no exceptions. These are exceptions for paying, not for taking. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Taking riba is always haram. There are no exceptions to that rule at any point for any reason anywhere. But giving riba, these are the exceptions that today we can see there's a need to give an exception for. So darura, this is something we're forced to. The moment the darura is gone, we take this out. Like this is just temporary until we can fix the problem.
I don't know if it sounds like a bad question, but let's say I do have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Why should I lend to other people if I'm not going to benefit out of it?
Well, that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. You don't have to do it. If you don't believe in Allah, that's a whole different story.
No.
Not as you, as a person. Yeah, because it's a very simple thing. Some things come down to one simple question. Do you believe in La ilaha illallah? Yes, you do. You're not allowed to take riba. If you don't, then fine. It's yours.
Isn't there a way if I can benefit from the...
Of course, and invest in someone. Instead of here's the money, give me back to more, $50,000 more when you're done. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're trying to do. It's none of my business. I'm not interested. Just give me back more money. Okay, what is that you want to do? I want to start a magazine. Okay, how much is that going to cost? Do you have an idea? Let me see what you have. Okay, I'll invest in that. And now he's a partner. He's carrying risk, but he'll also make a profit if it works out. The thing is that people who have money don't want to carry risk. Doesn't it make sense? If you have money, you don't want to carry risk. You have money. Why would you want to carry risk? But you don't have money, so you're willing to carry risk because you have nothing to lose. You already don't have any money. But if I do have money, I don't want to carry risk. Islam says you have money, you have to carry risk because the money isn't yours. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's money. It's in your hands. Carrying risk is a part of life. You carry risk every time you do everything. So money is not an exception to this. Or it's exploiting people's needs. Riba is as simple as exploiting people's needs. That's all. No one would ask for a loan if they had the cash, correct? Why would you ask for a loan? Why would you ever need a loan if you had the money in your pocket? You would never do it. So this is the idea that comes behind. Of course, that's why I tell you when talking about riba, fighting off riba as Muslims sounds psychotic to Western civilizations because to them money means more money and time means money, and what are you talking about? That's how we live here. Yeah, but it's okay to challenge a fundamental principle when it's fundamentally wrong. It's not a problem, but here they find a lot of difficulty in terms of accepting that. Yeah.
Definitely, it's very big topic and most controversial.
Sure.
Like if I need a camera, say for my business, I don't have money. You buy me the camera.
Yes.
You don't give me money, but you buy me camera.
Yes.
So instead of $1,000, which is the price, say I got refund you $1,500 in 10 years with this much fixed 3% additional.
Yeah.
So how about that?
So the thing is, who is the camera that you're paying for, owned by? So there's three parties here. All right. So here's the problem with this hypothesis or hypothetical. You have the group. Here the camera is here. So here's the owner of the camera. All right. Here's you. You don't have a camera. And then here's the third guy here, who what are we going to call him? Habib. So Habib, right, he's going to buy, he has the money. That's where the money is with Habib. So what is he going to do?
He's gonna buy the camera.
So if he buys the camera, so the camera is now here, it goes over here, and here where the camera is, and then he sells it to you, right, for more, no problem. That's fine. He bought this camera for 1,000. He's going to sell this camera for 1,200. Right? He can sell this camera for 100,000.
He can?
He can do whatever he wants. It's his camera. He can sell it for whatever the guy here wants to buy it for.
It can't be ridiculous.
Look. If you are going to accept the 100,000, that's your problem. Like, you do whatever. If you're going to look at a camera and say, I'm willing to pay $100,000, that's your problem. It's not his problem. He can sell it for whatever he wants because it's his camera. Now, what they do, that's not what they do. And when you say there's a fixed rate is just inflation. Fixed rates, when you see the word fixed rate, it's not riba, it's inflation. Fixed rates are inflation. Fixed rates equal inflation. Does not equal riba. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. This is just based on the fact that currency is going to lose its amount. It's not fair. If I bought it for 1,000, I'm going to sell it to you for 1,200, right? But by the time you're done, which is maybe like 5 years from now, the 1,200 is not worth the 1,000 that I bought it for. Like I lost money in this transaction, and we're not saying that someone who has money should be losing their money. We're just saying that they have to take risk like everyone else. That's all. I mean, you make money, just make it with a factor of risk that is acceptable. So here, if you add a fixed rate, that's not a problem. The problem is the person who is selling it to you actually owning it, or are they not really owning it? Meaning, did they buy it? Or what did they do? There's a different system that exists here that I don't understand fully, where the camera goes immediately from here, just with some interference of, meaning it's not really, yeah.
The bank.
Yeah, so there's something here that goes from the owner to you. It's just an interference of the banks, really, not Habib. Yeah.
So the bank would pay the cost to the company who is delivering that machine.
They would?
I would own that machine, but bank would pay directly to the company.
Okay. And now you pay the bank, right?
I pay back.
So what is the contract that the bank has, that you have with the bank?
10 years, say 3% additional. Fixed.
Yeah, so what's 3% on 1,000? $30? So you would pay them $1,030. Yeah, that's fine. Because again, they paid for it.
Yeah. They don't deliver the money. I don't get any money in my account. It goes directly to the company.
You don't get any money in your account.
They buy directly for him.
They buy all equipment. The company is delivering.
Yeah. In theory, the idea is fine. But in practice, if at no point the bank ever owned the camera here, owned the asset, it becomes problematic. How do they pay for you? Because it turns into a loan. But if they owned it and then they sold it, they're playing a risk. But between owning it and selling it, there's some time there where they could end up with the asset without you actually doing anything. Because when the camera is no longer, you can't pay for it, who gets it back? The bank or the owner? The owner gets it back, it's not the bank. The bank has to take it back because they have to own it. So when it's done like this, that's fine. When it's done like that, it turns into a loan that has riba in it. But that can change. The thing is, all these things can change. Just banks are too lazy to change it. So that's regarding business loans. Meaning, small changes in the contract could actually change the outcome of how we run it. But that's the challenge. Even when it comes to house mortgages are so simple. If you can just convince the banks to rewrite some of the contract clauses. Leasing cars, financing cars, small clauses within the contract could take riba out of it, and they would still make a good profit, and you would be happy. But the thing is, there's laziness in terms of changing that. There's not enough demand from Muslims. We haven't been able to organize as Muslims to put a demand that we want riba-free contracts, make a bit more money off of us in the long run, but give us contracts that are riba-free. And if there is if there's a demand for that, we will get it. Just like there was no halal meat maybe 25 years years ago or 30 years ago here, and now there is because of the demand for it. There will be for all these things if we can just put a demand for it. I mean, we want a clause, we want a contract that has that is riba free. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have just like two questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, number one, you said about credit cards. Like these days, there's Visa debits. Like I don't have credit cards for 4 years, and I'm
Okay.
able to survive.
Sure.
With the new Visa debits, and you pay what you own in the account.
Mhm,
Everywhere it works, online, everything. The only thing is government websites, but you send
Sure.
checks. If you
Good.
avoid all those exceptions and
Yeah.
you choose something that's better,
Ajr.
are you rewarded?
Of course. Hands down, like you get extremely rewarded. Any exception that exists, if you choose to, exceptions that are based on darura, based on extreme need or necessity, that you find a way to avoid altogether, you get rewarded. We offer them as an exception based on observation of need. Meaning a faqih looks at the need, and based on the observation he makes, he offers an exception. But if you are capable of staying away from it, then of course you're going to be rewarded more than everyone. Yes.
And then the second question is, okay, so student loan makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. Credit cards as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people
Yeah.
just can't avoid it. The third one would be mortgages.
Sure.
For mortgages, the fixed rate is the inflation. So what
Yeah.
is the riba?
Riba is in late payments. Riba always enters when there's with the clauses when there's a late payment. So when you're late on paying or you can't afford to put in the full amount, riba starts to accumulate on you.
But the way they do riba is through an amortization schedule, where like if you do a 35-year loan, let's say you took $300,000, your monthly payments is $1,000, for example, a month. What they do is the first month, 10% or less goes to your principal. Then 90% is collected, and they call it interest. And then what happens is, as the contract goes, near the end of the contract, it's flipped around.
This is just like they say istilahat, meaning these are just terminology that they use. Not always, like I said, the word interest and is used a lot. It doesn't always mean riba because they don't have the concept of riba anywhere. So they use the word interest anywhere they want. They don't care about it. But for us, because it means riba, or that's what we think it means, every time we see it, we hit the brakes and we have a heart attack because it's riba. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of the times when they're using the word interest, it's not really riba. It's representing something different. So in that case, that's not the riba part. No, the riba part is attached to when you are being late on payments, so you're not actually making the proper payments. They start the basic amount that you pay starts to increase, meaning you start to be required to pay more than you had initially agreed to pay in the contract that you wrote. So when I signed that contract, I had agreed to a certain amount on 35 years to pay. When I'm not paying, instead of there being a system, I'm just going to pay more and more and more as I go along. And that's the part and like I said, all the 4 contracts I put for you, you could easily never ever pay a cent of riba. But the thing is, the hurma, I told you guys this time, and I'll tell you it again, the hurma, the impermissibility is signing a contract that has a clause of riba in it. That is the problem. It's not really whether you pay it or not. Most people go through their lives with credit cards, student loans, house mortgages, and business loans, never pay a cent of riba. But the thing is that you actually signed a contract that has it in it, and that's the problem.
Oh no, sorry, I was going to go back to saying credit cards. If you don't have a late payment, you don't pay any interest.
Yes, exactly. So I gave 4 exceptions to, meaning 4 exceptions were credit cards, student loans, house mortgages, and life insurance. These 4 have exceptions. Some differed upon. Credit cards and student loans aren't differed upon. But the fact that we have a credit card, that means you've already signed a contract that has a clause of riba. You may end up paying it, may not. Most people, alhamdulillah, here don't end up paying any riba. But the fact that you entered an agreement that has riba in it, that's the problem really. It's not really, we're not supposed to pay riba at any point for any reason. But signing a contract that has it in, that has a possibility of riba in it, that is the problem.
If you are paying mortgage every month regularly, then it's okay?
Yeah, you're not paying riba, but the problem is, that's not what the scholars were arguing or talking about in the times they were talking. Is it okay for us to sign a contract that has riba in it for a house? Forget about paying riba. You're not supposed to pay riba at all. If you know that you don't have enough money to pay for this house, it's haram for you to enter this contract altogether. But let's say that you know that you'll be able to do it. You have a sustainable job and you have enough money and you're saving in your accounts to take care of at least a couple of months of employment, and you see forward in your life that inshallah you have the skills to stay employed. Is it okay to sign a contract that has a riba clause? That is the problem, really. It's not riba. It's haram to pay it at any point. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. I'd say.
Sorry?
So let's say you, because you
can't guarantee that you're going to pay them back.
Yeah, so the same thing. So for the four, I should have looked them up. So the four exceptions that the scholars have talked about, two agreed upon, two disagreed upon. The two agreed upon are credit cards and student loans. And the two disagreed upon are house mortgages and life insurance. So as a student, you're signing a contract that has riba in it, but that's seen permissible out of the exception that there's no other way for you to get an education in this society without doing that, unless there is an Islamic alternative. So if your father is a millionaire, then you shouldn't take a student loan if they can lend you the money or pay it for you. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
Why did you say that taking or leasing or financing cars is halal?
Because there are clauses of riba in that too. And cars aren't necessities, meaning you can easily go to the auction and buy a $600 car. I have a Toyota that's $500 6 years ago, and alhamdulillah, right? So you don't have to, unless you want to actually enjoy a good car, that's a different thing. So financing cars and leasing cars, I don't believe to be an exception, because it's not a necessity. But the thing is, you can easily, this is the annoying part, that you could easily sit with a dealer and rewrite a contract to take all the clauses of riba, and they'll still be happy with what they end up getting in case you're late. They'll be happy with it. But the thing is just a matter of, so let's say this is a Toyota, it's a dealer, he's dealing Toyota cars. Now he has to stick to whatever contracts are given to him from the source. To change that is a long process that he's not willing to, it's a headache that he's not willing to go through just to sell you or lease you or finance you a car. But if there was demand for it, if the Muslim community demanded these things more, you could easily get contracts for cars, for houses, for life insurance, for any, that does not have clauses of riba within it. But the problem with us is just we're not there yet in terms of go ahead one more time.
So what did you say about business loans? Can you summarize that?
So business loans, if the bank is buying the assets and selling it to you, they can sell it to you for as much as they want. Fixed rates aren't a problem. But if they're not selling it to you, meaning they are literally, the contract is saying that it's a business loan, meaning they lent you the money, you're going to pay them back with interest on it. That's the problem. Again, the fixed rate is not the price, it's inflation. It's the fact that they have riba clauses within it, meaning if you're late and if you're, and you're saying the problem here, the problem is the clause that if you don't do it on time, it accumulates on the capital that you agreed to. It's going to increase, and it's limitlessly going to increase. Again, if there was a penalty, like a $50, $100 penalty, and that would be the last of it, and after that, then we have to take back the asset or change our but no, it's a limitless increase. It'll just keep on increasing. It'll keep on accumulating debt.
So 0%, when you see things like for the cars, 0%.
Still, there's clauses of riba there.
That's not really the
No, no.
Fixed rates, we keep thinking.
Exactly. So there's a lot of misconceptions. It took me a while to understand, because I'm not in Islamic sciences. Finance is not my specialty. It is not what I do. I had to go and I had to learn all these things in terms of how the system here works. And I found out that we misunderstand the word interest. We don't even know. It's most of the time it's not even riba. It's not what it is. Riba are small clauses that exist in contracts that will cause you to pay more than what you had agreed initially to pay, based on you being late in time, being later on. That is where
that changes everything.
That changes a lot of things. If all you need is maybe 15 economically oriented individuals to go to the right institutions and start writing and certifying contracts that would serve Muslims in terms of being, and things would change drastically for Muslims living here.
The problem is them making money at the end of the day.
We want them to make money, just not through riba, and they would be okay with that if they just saw the demand for it. But we're not providing the demand, because we're taking the shortcut every single time. The 4 exceptions are there, but everything else you shouldn't be taking the shortcut for. And instead, maybe look for people to help you get
So there is London car dealerships
where are they?
like in London, but this is like what they would do. For example, say they had cars worth $10,000 on the lot.
Yeah.
You had cash, they'll sell it for 10, but then they'll say, okay, you want to do monthly payments, we'll sell it to you for 13 then.
That's fine.
That's
yeah. Look, whatever you paying in installments, the price can change. That's fine, as long as I own the asset and I'm selling it to you. I'm not putting in riba clauses in case you're late or in case you don't pay the full amount every single month. Or I'm not adding to that, right? Again, fixed rates on long periods of time, like years and years, makes sense because the value of the currency is plummeting. You want to make sure that whoever bought this house is not losing money at the end. He's still making it. So none of these are problematic. Okay, we'll end with that. We only read one sentence today, but inshallah next time I'm going to try to read, and we'll keep the questions until the end.